before I jump into some deeper questions, I was checking out your Facebook and I noticed very importantly that you played pickleball a couple weeks ago. How was that?
I really enjoyed it. What got me excited about it, though, is, you know, if you want to slow down dementia or Alzheimer's, right? The first thing you look at is physical activity. That has the greatest impact. But if you can add to that mentally challenging aspects to it, it improves it tremendously. And that's what pickleball is. It's hard to keep score. It's the weirdest way. I mean, I still haven't figured it out, but so you got a lot of movement going on, but isn't so stressful that people don't do it.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to run very far at all. I mean, you don't really run. But I'm looking forward to expanding it in the valley.
I'm excited to see it expand in the valley as well, but I'm excited to see your skills just go through the roof. I think you were born for pickleball. I think you're going to be incredible. I can just see you out there just smoking it right by people. My parents got to play they're about 65, 67, and they got to play last summer and they loved it. And we got to play with the grandkids, young people can enjoy it. Every generation enjoys it. I think my wife and I play a couple times a week with some people from our church. We just love it. It's awesome.
I have a tennis court at the house, and I'm having that converted into 4 pickleball courts. So
wise move.
It be a way to get. We're not as socially active as we used to be, and that'll kind of fix that.
Well, I was just excited for you because I know how much we love it. My parents love it, and it's definitely trending. A lot of people are enjoying it across the country, and I'm excited to see the Antelope Valley. Yeah. I also saw that a couple of weeks ago. Looks like you have another grandson, Logan, right?
Logan is a girl.
Oh my goodness, gotcha. Okay, that's amazing. How's Logan doing?
She is fabulous. And Rucker had a child too that is about 7 months old now, so they're going to be very close in age, and we're really excited about it.
That's amazing. What would you say being having grandchildren, has that changed you at all, or what's one of your favorite things about being a grandparent?
Well, it certainly made me happier. Mm-hmm. I mean, I really, when I'm with them, I'm a different person.
Yeah.
And it's all about them. And, that's just the way it is.
Yeah. And, that's amazing. My parents, their only grandkids are in Thailand. My sister's a missionary over there. Yeah. So I feel for them, you guys just got to get some more trips out to Thailand under your belt, so they're going out this Christmas.
It's hard to articulate, but it's very much a different feeling. And also, when you're tired of them, the parents got to take them.
I love it. Well, huge congratulations for another amazing granddaughter. That's super beautiful. Well, I wanted to jump into a few questions, and I had a great time learning a little bit more, about you. You're an amazing person. I'd obviously seen you at Lancaster, speaking and, interacting with Pastor Chapel, where I grew up at church. But man, I was really enjoying just learning some more about the experiences that you've had, the things that you've built. And I was telling my wife last night, I haven't even talked to you yet, and you've inspired me. So thank you for that. but jumping into a few questions though, I mean, I was noticing you've been one of the top attorneys in Southern California for years. You've reached record-breaking verdicts. You've led the city of Lancaster incredibly since 2008, correct? Yeah. Yes. You have a beautiful family. You work with some of your family in an incredible way, which is awesome. So it's just, you have so much that you've accomplished and achieved. It's an honor talking to you. And I want to ask you, I want to ask.
I don't see it. I don't feel it really. But my wife told me the other day, she read something about how a butterfly can't see its own wings, and that kind of explained it to me. Like, I don't know what you all see. I don't see it. You know?
We see a lot, and it's amazing because it's very inspiring for people that are on the journey, so thank you. And you have an incredible mind, and I noticed you really have an emphasis on growth and continual learning. So I want to ask you, can you give a few thoughts on maybe your philosophy of having that growth mindset and the importance of continual growth?
Well, you want to keep in mind that we change. As we grow, we change. So what was true in the beginning is not true now, and I just have a vague recollection of the beginning. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Uh, the If I had one thing to attribute whatever success I have, it's that I try to be a little bit better every day. I try to know a little bit more about presentation skills, about the law, about now I'm really involved in biotech, and so a lot of my time is spent trying to learn science because I had no science background. I mean, I didn't graduate from high school,
Wow. Wow.
so it's kind of a narrow education that I've had, and but it also makes life very exciting for me, because every day is very different, very new, very, you know, uh, but I wouldn't say I ever. I mean, I get intellectually that okay, I've accomplished a lot, but I don't actually feel like I have. I feel like because everybody focuses on their failures, not their successes. You know, uh,
Amazing.
so
Would you say with your journey into biotech, how has that been for you? That's super fascinating. Where do you see biotech going in the next couple of decades?
well, I my life has been just so lucky in so many ways. Uh, but my wife has a lung disease that she has a lung disease, and so once I learned that, then I just set out finding how do we fix this because I'm kind of a fixer,
Yeah.
and there is no treatment, and so I funded a couple biotechs to develop the treatment, and we did. They were very successful.
Wow.
I mean, it started out, it's most disease we now know, especially age-related diseases. It it is fibrotic and inflammatory.
Mhm.
And what we've recently learned is that because of the fibrosis, which is scarring, and the inflammation, your body blocks out your stem cells. It keeps them from developing.
Mhm.
If you can modulate the fibrosis and the inflammation, your body doesn't repair; it regenerates. So it's
Mhm.
regenerative medicine. Uh, the first target is osteoarthritis. They'll be in human trials within a couple months. We know that we've essentially solved osteoarthritis problem because we did in dogs. We know what it'll do. We also know that in mice we've solved the pulmonary fibrosis problem.
Mhm.
We don't know how well it'll translate to large animals or to people. But in the course of that, they discovered two very unique technologies for doing it. And all of it treats age related diseases. Now, the science is just, it's been published in Science, it's been published in Nature, it's robust.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky, but, if we hadn't put the money into it, it never would have got out of the lab. It just
Right.
stayed in a petri dish. It's just the way things work. And, it's about a $3 million investment over time, but it was the best $3 million I ever spent, and I'm very hopeful that we will get it into people in time.
That's amazing.
Uh,
I think that's super beautiful what you're doing. Ultimately, your why speaking with was your wife. And so it has the most powerful purpose behind what you're doing, but it's going to impact so many people. I don't know if you've ever heard of a guy named Brian Johnson. He's an eccentric guy. So if you look him up, be warned, he's eccentric. He sold a company called Braintree It was acquired by PayPal back in 2013 for $800 million. And now he's dedicating many millions of dollars a year to reverse aging, but he experiments on himself quite intensively. And he has a lot of his experimentation out on Twitter, now X, I guess, right? But out on Twitter as well as YouTube. Highly recommend, if you're into biotech, checking him out.
What's his last name?
It's Brian Johnson.
Johnson.
Brian. And I think you'll find it very fascinating. You'll have to text me later and let me know what you think, because he's a very unique individual, but he's posting all of his findings online. He said his goal, Rex, he's like, I don't care what people today think of me. He's like, I care what people think of me in 1,000 years. It's just a unique guy. He really wants to make an impact and help reverse aging, but he is spending pretty exorbitant amounts of money to make that happen. And it's unique seeing his journey. He has reversed his own aging, and he posts that, whether it's his skin or his organs or whatever it is. All that to say, very unique and interesting.
Be totally truthful. I experiment on myself also.
That's very interesting. Yeah. How's that going for you?
Well, I'm 71 and I've never been in this good of physical condition. My joints aren't, I got old joints, but the rest of it is doing quite well.
That's amazing.
But, every now and then well, you don't need to know that. Sometimes it doesn't work out real well.
Well, whenever you're ready to share, let me know, because I am all about, I'm only 30 years old, but I'm all about reversing aging. So.
Well, there's some things that we absolutely know work in regards to slowing aging. We know that rapamycin, if you take 5 milligrams of rapamycin once a week, we know it'll slow down the aging process. I also lost 30 pounds. Just they disappeared when I started that. There's stuff out there now that we know has a profound impact. Nothing like what we have in, the company is Carthronics and the other company is Parris. Nothing as powerful as that. I mean, that is just off the charts powerful. And, it's been a really long struggle, but, like Bollinger Ingram is a huge pharmaceutical in Europe. They've now partnered with us to, they think that one line of the drugs that we have will slow down metastasis. If you can slow down metastasis, you can cure cancer, because you can remove the tumors before they spread. But they haven't started the animal studies on that. But they're convinced enough that it's going to work that they have agreed to pay all the costs of developing it, just for a right of first refusal. So they're working on 10 different molecules, and every one of those is a multi-million-dollar investment.
Wow.
So, I'm pretty sure we're on to something that is going to have profound impacts on the world. And the federal government's gotten involved. There's a new agency called ARPH, because our health system collapses in the next 5 years, meaning we will not be able to provide medical care to everyone. How bad it's going to be, I don't think anybody really knows, but we know it's going to be bad. And it's because of the aging population, the lack of nurses and doctors, and the cost of medications. That last 6 months of our life costs a fortune. So they're funding moonshots for regenerative medicine, and they called us. So, that was pretty exciting. But what's really exciting is they'll fast track it through FDA. So it's not going to take us 10 years.
Beautiful. Well, the future of biotech seems to be promising and bright, and it's awesome that you're a huge part of that. So,
but great. You gotta. It's like personal injury work. You're going to lose some. You got to be willing to take the losses. But the rewards are so great.
Absolutely. So many would describe you, Rex, as a maverick, a trailblazer, and unconventional in the best way. So why do you think that it's important to think outside the box? And do you have any examples of how you've done
I think I just do it. I never thought it was important to do it. It's just who I am. Uh, it's also, I'm a little different than everyone else because I had a brain injury in law school and I lost a piece of my brain. And so my brain had to rewire itself, you know. And although I have some abilities for it, I think differently than other people. I just do. I, I, I see patterns that other people don't see. Uh, but, I also have some downsides. Like I have no appreciation for risk at all, you know,
that?
and that's why my wife runs the money. I'm not allowed to touch. I don't even know which bank she puts it in.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing.
uh, but
Well,
I think I think my personality was such that I was destined to fail until I met my wife. And,
mm,
we are such a strong couple where individually, not so much,
mm,
and we complement each other so well. Uh, and I absolutely trust her. Uh, an unqualified trust, you know, to
yeah.
the point that I really don't know where our assets are. I have no idea, and nor do
Wow.
I want to know.
Wow.
Just so long as she can, you know, uh, give me the money to invest when I see something that's really promising.
Right.
And she doesn't always do it. Sometimes she just says, "No, that's too far out there, even for you." you know?
That's amazing. Yeah, you and your wife, I mean, you're the definition of a power couple, right? What you've accomplished together is astonishing, really. I mean, what would you say with Carol are some of the key dynamics? You mentioned trust, but that you would attribute to you guys working so well together for so long.
Well, I'm just really blessed to have met her. She is incredibly bright. I mean, off the chart bright. And how do I know? We all took a family IQ test once, and it was just all of a
She
sudden
won?
everything became clear.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Because I'd always paraded around as the intelligent one, right? Because I had the education ultimately, but not even close. Not even close.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So a little, what were you saying?
Well, it's just God intended us to be a couple, uh, and it's certainly not any clearer than with me and my wife. I just the way it is, and I'm totally
Yes.
good with it. I mean, and she stays in her lane, and I stay in my lane, and everything works out well. It's only when we start changing lanes that we have trouble.
Duly noted. That's amazing. So a little bit more about your story. I thought it was incredible that in your early days you actually slept on the floor of the law firm, but now you've obviously achieved incredible success across multiple verticals, and you've really had this remarkable against the odds kind of underdog story of success. So I'm just curious, with your unique perspective, do you have any words of wisdom or principles for someone like myself or younger entrepreneurs that are coming up in this new generation?
Well, the I think another aspect that I have is I can bear the laughter. You know, I can bear the scorn of other people. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It means I can bear it, and I can bear it better than most. You know, and so I'll pursue avenues that other people won't, and because of peer pressure. Uh, I'm a little more immune to peer pressure than most people. Uh, it you know it it's just something. I grew up socially isolated, meaning I didn't know how to get along with people. I didn't know how to make friends. You know, I just didn't know how. And when I finally learned that that was just a skill set and that I could go to the library and learn, it became very easy. Uh, but even to this day, I tend to be very much a hermit, and people are always surprised at that because, I'm the mayor and I've got a law firm and all this. But it's really hard for me, meaning energy wise. It takes a lot of my energy to be with groups of people. I'm not naturally gregarious. Where I recharge is by myself. And, the family has grown very accustomed to it. It's like we'll have a family event, well, Christmas, say, and I'm in and out of it. I go to my office, I work, and then I come out. And, I love hearing them in the background, but I don't necessarily want to be with them.
Yeah. I gotcha.
They're okay with that, I
Yeah.
mean, they know I love them. They know
Sure.
I'd stop a bullet for any one of them.
Yeah.
They, but they just recognize that but what does that give me? That gives me a lot of time to focus on learning things, and I read, who the smartest man in the room is the person who reads the most books.
Mm.
And it doesn't really matter how long it takes him to read them, just so long as he reads them. Meaning it's not an IQ situation. The smartest man in the room is the man who read the most books. And it's that simple. And that's usually me because I get up at 4 o'clock every morning and I start reading and I read for a couple hours.
Would you say, besides getting up at 4 a.m., are there any other daily habits or rhythms that you have that you feel like has contributed to who you are?
Well, when I finally, I was a drug addict and an alcoholic 40 years ago. When I finally stopped drinking and using,
Yeah.
then I learned nothing good happens after 9 o'clock at night.
Mm.
Once you learn that rule, life gets much easier.
Yeah.
It, we're very aware of our bandwidth and how best to use it, and we structure our day so that by the end of it is when we're wasting time. We never waste time in the morning. We match it according to our ability to absorb information. It makes sense.
Absolutely. As far as absorbing information, something that I've been working on and kind of struggling through recently is I love to absorb information. We live in the information age now, right? There's so much content out there. You can be in the room with some of the smartest scientists, psychologists. You can listen to a Harvard lecture now. I can listen to Peterson debate Sam Harris on, something very deep and dense. It's awesome on one end. On the other end, I'm curious how you have been able to balance intaking information over the years with implementation. Because, right, we never really grow until we take action, right? So do you intentionally take action, or are you just an action taker by nature? Or how would you recommend people who now in this information age can actually live out what they're learning?
No, I learn a skill and then I practice and practice and practice it. Like when I'm talking to you, this gesture took me 6 months so you couldn't see it. I mean,
Wow.
but this gesture is a gesture of affiliation.
Nice.
But I've attempted to make human relations take it down to the most granular level possible, and then learn those grains and then practice them. It was one of the reasons, not the only reason, of course, but one of the reasons why I wanted to be mayor, because it's the same skill set that I use in the courtroom.
Wow.
And I don't get to practice enough in the courtroom. But now, as a mayor, I practice every day.
It's fascinating. I heard you talk some about cognitive science in the past. I mean, you're speaking to it a little bit right now, but what makes cognitive science such a passion and a hobby of yours? And do you have any other facts, that you find interesting about that field study?
Well, I think that it not only gives you an ability to predict what people are going to do, it gives you a tremendous ability to guide them in what you want them to do, and it's, we tend to think people are chaotic. They're not. They're very complex, and complexity is different than chaotic, because anything that's complex you can learn and execute. Chaos, not so much. You know, you never know when some butterfly is going to flap its wings. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's like you were talking about how to absorb information. There's a class. It's on edX, and it's out of the University of San Diego, and it's learning how to learn.
Mhm.
Uh, and there's techniques. It's so you chunk it. There's all kinds of techniques to learn it. And matching it to visualizations are so important.
Mhm.
And and I also kind of eventually I got to the point of recognizing that most everything is wrong. Everything they were teaching me about how to try a case, everything they were teaching me is how to, present information to people was just wrong. And once I got to that, then I started to find out how to do it the correct way. And, we just had a trial. We were doing a trial, and the judge, I mean, it was the most convoluted, weirdest thing I'd ever seen. But after we swore the jury, he killed the trial, and he had to go through a lot of manipulations to do it. But it was very clear to me why. By the time that jury was picked, he knew there was no stopping the verdict and that the verdict was going to be huge, you know? And he was one of those corporate, call them tall building lawyers, and who didn't like it, didn't want to see it. And that occasionally happens. It doesn't happen very often, but it. I just wrote an article, and I don't know if I'm going to publish it or not because it's going to have some ramifications if I do. But our whole system of justice is now, at least our civil system, is no longer sustainable because the verdicts are just too high. They're just too great. It's because of the cognitive science and the word selection and how you stand, where you stand, when you use your voice, when you don't use your voice, when you make eye contact, when you don't make eye contact. It all plays together. And remember, in my cases, there's no reason I shouldn't win. I get to pick the case.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes I start believing my own press and I take unwinnable cases, but but yeah, to me, it's all a science, all of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I thought that was fascinating in, learning a bit more about you, how much you are a learner, you love science, and you delve into and really apply yourself in that. I think with the evolution of AI recently, I think it's very interesting. I love what you said about learning how to learn. And I think that if we're more intentional about learning, instead of like learning shouldn't be just something that's reactive or that comes to us in our adult lives. I think being super intentional with learning is something I've seen you do. And now with AI, I've been slowly discovering these tools to synthesize information, summarize information, and ultimately sometimes long form is best, whether it's a video you're watching, a podcast, a book, whatever. But now with so much information out there, like I kind of alluded to earlier, there's some ways to take a 3-hour YouTube conversation that, two very intellectual people have and be able to get the 20 best insights from that conversation instantaneously without having to watch for 3 hours. So there's ways to learn at a very high clip now. So are we seeking those out?
I'm astonished by this AI. I mean, I'm just
Yes.
slowly exploring it now. But a couple of months ago, I asked it to write an opening statement for me for a trial.
Yeah.
And the case is about an 8-year-old girl falls on an asphalt playground that had cracks in it that they had many emails asking the district to fix it. She hit her head. They failed to call an ambulance when they should have, and now she's brain damaged. Those are the facts I gave it.
Right.
A 3-page beautiful opening. 30 seconds later, 30
Amazing.
seconds later.
It's pretty amazing.
Now, I
It's
had to
almost
make
like
some
it's
changes to it,
sure.
but it was better than anything I could do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, you could make those changes even through, I don't know if it was GPT or Bard or whatever you were using, but you could make those changes through Bard or just say, make it a bit more sentimental, a
Right.
bit more nostalgic, a bit more creative, whatever. I use it multiple times a day. It's pretty phenomenal.
I don't know where this is going to end. You know, it
Right.
ultimately is going to take us to a place where we're going to have to redistribute the wealth in a way that doesn't require people to work for it, because you know the jobs just aren't going to be there.
Right. Well, as they say, the creators of the AI, who hold a bit of power right now, but they say, well, it's going to create new jobs. So we hope so.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, it's going to create new jobs that AI can do.
you're probably right for sure. I mean, what do you think? In the next 10 years, where do you see? Is there anything interesting you see AI doing over the next 10 years?
Well, you know, I think the technology is there today for me to let go of half of my people if I wanted to. You know,
Don't tell them that. Oh my goodness.
well, I'm not going to do it. I'll
Right.
find, I'll expand the market is what I'll do.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
know, and keep them employed.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that runs into somebody who can't be employed. Yeah, you
Mhm.
follow me? Uh,
Absolutely.
but we just bought into a company that we just load all the information about the case into, right? It answers the interrogatories for us. It files the motions for us. It prepares the complaint for us. It even does a settlement demand letter to the insurance company, and it
Amazing.
tells us what medical records we don't have, that we're missing.
Wow.
The That will be functioning within a year. You know, it. So really, where I see people having jobs are people in a higher level of intellect that can supervise the AI. Because it makes mistakes, and
Right.
it doesn't always know who your audience is, and I mean, we write to the audience. But like one of the things we're already using it for is, there's a thing called um, cognitive ease. People like to do things with cognitive ease, you know,
Right.
and the more we stress that, I mean, the more we cause cognitive discomfort or energy expenditure, the less persuasive we become to that person. So
Mm.
even with the judges, even with the courts, I'll say rewrite this fifth grade level, because I want it to be very easy for them to read it. Not that they can't read it, but
Yep.
I want it to just flow. You know, the other thing we're using it for is, when I first started in this business, I used to think that it was the meanest junkyard dog that was successful in law, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was so wrong about it. It's just, and it's really not me. I I love people. I don't like
Yeah.
being mean to people. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I don't want to be around them, but I do
Yeah.
love them. the,
That's
the
hilarious.
But with my lawyers now, every email they send out has to go through AI. For tone, they're not allowed to be mean because
Wow.
when you see that, you turn away from it. It doesn't persuade anybody. And what are we ultimately here for? We're here to persuade. You know?
That's fantastic. I mean, that made me think of Abe Lincoln, the note that he wrote to General Meade, and then he just didn't send it because it was kind of a frustrated tone. That's amazing that you do that. I mean, is there a reason that
I
you're
write
kind of
those
in a
notes. I write those notes every day, and
yeah,
I finally learned not to send them.
just put them in your desk. They'll find them all way in the future. That's amazing. I mean, you're in like a conflict and an admonition heavy industry or vertical. I mean, what makes you want to, kill them with kindness? What makes you want to just have that positive, optimistic, kind tone?
Because I like to win.
Mm.
I mean, I want the jury to want to do what I want. You know,
Mm.
they're not going to want to do what I want if I make them sad or if I make them angry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the and I, it took me a while to stumble onto all of this. A few years ago, I had a trial, and I'm talking to the jury afterwards, and the result was tremendous. I mean, just an unbelievable result. And the foreman, she came up to me and she put her hand on me, and she said, "Rex, I have to go, but I want you to know that you're one of the kindest men I've ever met," and left. And I realized, and the reason that happened was because the client was having an incredibly difficult time. And it was just how I treated him, you know. Uh, the but that started me down that path, and then since then I've been reading the research on it, and that really is the way it is. If you make people angry, they turn away from you because their mirror cells kick in and they're angry, and people don't like to be angry, you know.
Right.
And once you get that, then it changes your whole approach as to how you do things. Yeah.
Think.
Also, here I don't allow these guys to tell me they're not afraid. The most threatening thing in the world is a courtroom, you know? And the reason for it is because, you got 12 representatives sitting there. You've got the high chieftain up there, and one of you are going to be banished. Well, banishment meant death. The animals ate you, you froze to death, the tribe a mile away killed you. So, we evolved with this terrible fear of public humiliation. And I'm always up against, these major firms, senior partners, as they're holding onto the podium so they don't shake while they're doing their opening, Well, so I set out, how do you fix that? How do you solve that? What's fear? Fear is a rapid heartbeat. All you have to do is slow your heartbeat down. So then I developed the techniques, and I read about who's doing what to slow down your heart rate. And now I teach them how to slow down their heart rate. And we're never afraid once we're on our feet. But before we get on our feet, we have to slow our heart rate down because it's racing just like the other guy. Makes sense?
That absolutely makes sense. It reminds me of the concept of Olympic athletes. They don't interpret fear as fear or nervousness as nervousness, right? Their nervousness, they interpret that as excitement, anticipation, bring it on, So I'm sure there's an element to that in what you guys do.
Yeah, you don't want to lower it too low either. You want it at about 100 beats a minute. That's when you're in the zone.
That's amazing. So I heard that you like metaphors, and you kind of mentioned, the cognitive science and aspects there. So I have a metaphor-filled question for you. Here we go. What lights the fire in your heart? What acts as the spark that propels you like a shooting star through the night sky? And in the grand symphony of life, what melody plays in your soul and inspires you to dance relentlessly to the rhythm of your passions? And more simply put, what drives Rex Parris?
Well, there's a lot of things that drive me. If I were to prioritize what my concerns are and where my energy is, the first is climate extinction, because I really want to see my grandchildren live. And right now they won't. I mean, it's just it's just the fact. And people can debate all they want about it's just a cycle, or, I mean, volcanoes do this, or, all the things we hear. But the fact of the matter is we know it's fossil fuels, and we know that even if we did nothing more, if it stopped today, we're still dead. Not only do we have to stop it, we have to pull that carbon out of that atmosphere. Because the only reason we're not dead now is because the oceans are the heat sink of the world, and they haven't warmed yet, but they're warming. There are places on the planet this year that reach 98 degrees surface temperature of the water. 98 degrees. You can almost cook in that. They now, why does it mean that my grandchildren are going to die, because the countries that are most affected by it, they have nuclear weapons, and they will not go quietly into the night, you know? So yeah, I'm passionate about that, and that's why, as the mayor of this city, it became the first net zero city, the first city that required all new housing to be net zero, to be able to go off the grid if you wanted to, and we will become the first hydrogen powered city and be off the grid, uh, because I'm passionate about wanting my grandchildren to live. You know?
That's amazing. Would you say Lancaster being that net zero city is one of the things you're most proud of during your tenure as mayor?
Um,
Or what other things would you say you can look back on and say, I'm glad we did that?
I'm awfully proud of that, but what I was most proud of is when I got elected mayor, this was a very dangerous city.
Mm.
You know, we had more gang murders the year I got elected than Compton had. You know, it was that bad.
I remember because I was a young child growing up in Lancaster, and my neighborhood was greatly affected by gang violence. And I personally was actually affected. And I noticed when you became mayor, as I was a young boy, I think I was about 12 or so when you became mayor. And there was absolute, very tangible, positive change after you became mayor. And I saw that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't sure. I mean, the sheriff's department, some of the deputies were taking bets that I wouldn't last 6 months. As people I was
well, you beat that. You beat that.
But that I'm very proud of. You know, we're not going to sleep at night to the sounds of gunshots anymore. You know, 2 years after I was elected, we had 0 gang murders.
Wow.
Now, was it draconian? It was. It was. Did we do things that I never dreamed I would be supportive of? We did. But our children stopped dying, and they were dying when I got elected. That I'm really proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that I was able to bring so much employment. I went to China and brought BYD back with me, and they hired 1,000 people. You know what 1,000? That's 1,000 families with mortgage-paying jobs. I'm really proud of that. But none of this did I do. I didn't do it. I just encouraged other people to do it. And I kept the toxic people that say no to everything out of their way, and I was pretty brutal about that too. I mean, I had a no-fly list, I called it. These people, if you invite them to your event, I'm not coming. And if it was a city event, they were not invited. Now, how they got on the list was they just had to be toxic and say no to everything. I don't care if people disagree with me, but they got to have a solution, Yeah. And as soon as that became the culture of the city, things got a lot better.
Incredible. I have one more question before a small handful number of popcorn quick questions, okay?
Okay.
So part of your story is that you dropped out of high school, you had some kind of run-in with the law, and I think might have been sentenced to jail, but thankfully it was only community service, right? So how do you think that experience shaped your life? And then in other challenging, difficult seasons of your life, what do you credit to your resilience? How did you push through? How are you able to overcome those obstacles in your life?
I wish I knew the answer to that. And I really don't. But along the way, I ran into some very loving people, that reached out a hand to me and gave me the guidance I needed at the right time. Now, I think if I had actually gone to jail, it would have been a much different story, and it would have been a terrible story. But because, I didn't have to actually go to jail, that I didn't have to have that experience, and it was all very tenuous, but, there were people along the way that, they were angels. They saved me in so many different ways. And there were people along the way that recognized that I do think differently. that I am different, and it's okay. I'm neurodivergent,
Nice. I like that.
and uh, but ultimately, I don't really credit myself with doing anything. It was always the people that I was with that made such a huge difference. You know?
It's incredible. Can you speak to that briefly, the importance of community and relationships in your life?
Well, I didn't have them in the beginning. I was isolated. So they meant so much more to me when I started to develop them. They weren't a given. To most people, they were given. They weren't a given to me at all. Uh, but as far as, you know, we cannot thrive alone. We're a gregarious animal. We're meant to be in a community, and we're meant to be supportive of that community. And I find that if you want to get healthier and happier, get more involved in your community. That morning at pickleball was the best thing that happened to me in a month, because it was community,
Right.
and it wasn't, you know, I wasn't having to do all the answers because I was the beginner. They were teaching me, but usually, people have expectations of you that are so far out of left field. You
Yeah.
know, it's I think 12 people who are committed to anything can accomplish anything, and I really believe that. And I don't think 12 is coincidental. I think that is how we were designed. You know, and the more diverse that 12 is, the more powerful that group becomes. And, it's just, if we can just eliminate the toxicity of people gossiping about each other and, finding the bad stuff. And, one of the things I've started doing here as much as I can is you can't talk. It's always been the case in the office. My wife enforced this. You talk bad about another employee, you get one warning.
Hmm.
The next time she'd walk in with a box and you knew what you had to do. She hasn't had to do that in years. But the culture of this place is you better not be bad mouthing somebody you work with unless you call them into the room. You say whatever you want if they're in the room or get them on the phone and then you can say anything you want, but it can never be behind their back. You know, just that one little rule makes us so powerful as a law firm because I've never seen another law firm where it wasn't just filled with backbiting,
Yeah.
toxic, competitive behavior. You know,
Yeah. Hmm.
uh, you want to accomplish great things, bring your group together and love each other. I mean, what does love mean? Love means being concerned about the other person's well being. You know, I can honestly tell you, I love this city. I love it with all my heart because every waking moment, I am 100% concerned about the well-being of the families that live here. The I hate to sound so Pollyannish about it, but that really is what it comes down to. If you eliminate the toxic behavior of people as much as possible and create the most supportive environment you can, but I also, I'm very forgiving of people because for the most part, there's some things I can't forgive, but for the most
Right.
part, I think most bad behavior, whether it's criminal or otherwise, is contextual. You know, like the public corruption is always a big deal when you're the mayor. Because you're always having to guard against it and see what people are doing, and uh, but you see, that's not a temptation of mine. But I have all the money that my grandchildren will ever spend.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So how do I sit in judgment of anybody? Because I'm not in the context they're in, you know? That doesn't mean I tolerate it. I don't. But it doesn't mean I hate them either. Right? Make sense?
Absolutely. And for sake of time, I'm just going to give you a few popcorn questions here. But one thing I wanted to speak to. You were talking about community and pickleball, and you had a great time.
Yep.
Just an idea for a fundraiser for the city of Lancaster. We could have Mayor Parris and Carol versus Pastor Chapel and Terry. Come out, check out the tournament. You never know what kind of crowd that would draw. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, I'll certainly, Paul is my closest friend,
Wow.
uh, and I will certainly propose it to him.
I mean, at the very least, an outreach event for Lancaster Baptist. You just never know. So, and it's just something to pray about. Last few popcorn questions, and these you could, I'm sure, expound upon, but for sake of time, we'll just do quick rapid fire answers for you. Are there any books or authors that have really impacted you over the years?
Oh, lots of them. Lots of them. Probably the book that had the most impact was the Book of Jewish Wisdom. Yeah. And the reason I read it is I was thinking, well, that's the Old Testament. Why wouldn't I read it?
A lot of wisdom in there. Yeah.
But there was incredible wisdom in it, and I'd read it every day. And the take homes just made me a better person.
That's beautiful.
The cognitive science books are, Caldini, anything he writes, you should read. Dan Heath, anything he writes, you should read. He wrote his latest book, I think, is Upstream, which, it starts out with the metaphor of these two guys are fishing along the riverbank. And they see a drowning kid go by and they jump in and save him. And before they could get out, another one is there, and then another one. And one of the guys gets out of the river and his friend says, "Where are you going? Kids are drowning." He says, "I'm going to go find out who's throwing those kids in the river."
That's awesome.
When you start focusing on, like if you're going to go into public service, you want to focus upstream. Quit putting all your resources into trying to solve the problem after it becomes a problem. Put the resources in stopping the problem to begin with. I used, when I got elected and we were having the gang problems, I said, I am not interested in helping one person who's in a gang. As far as I'm concerned, they're domestic terrorists, and if it's up to me, I'd take a bulldozer and tear down their house, just like they do in Israel. Now, did I really mean that? No, but it sounded good, right? But it did mean that I don't care about you if you're in a gang. If you get out of the gang, I'll give you the shirt off my back. I'll do anything to keep you from getting in the gang. But once you're in the gang, that's not where we should be spending our money. And so we quit doing that. We spent it in the neighborhoods. Like graffiti goes down immediately, because what is that but advertising? No, they don't get to wear their colors without having law enforcement problems. What is that but advertising and scaring the other kids? Everything went into kids. Don't, one time I went on a raid where we busted in this door, the gang members at 6 o'clock in the morning. And there was a woman about 55 it was her house. And she looks at me and she goes, "You're the mayor." Now, remember, I'm in full regalia. I've got a black jacket. It looked like Santa Claus,
Amazing.
And she said to me, she goes, "You're the mayor." And I said, "Yes, I am." She goes, "I want to thank you for doing something about those gangs." I realized even the gangs don't like gangs.
Who knew?
But I think the stress level of the neighborhoods was such that it drove people into them. So fix the stress level. Lower the stress level. We put in neighborhood impact homes run by the churches so kids had a safe place to go and learn things. We, lower the stress level.
Yes.
And we've been very successful so far in it.
It's beautiful. One more question for you. Imagine it's your last day on Earth and all of your social media disappeared. All the YouTube videos, lectures that you've done, is all gone. What are 3 truths that you would want to leave with the world or leave with those that you've loved and impacted?
Ask that one more time. What you want me to leave?
What are 3 truths that you would want to leave with the world or leave with those that you love?
I would want people to really get that people do make the best decisions they can, given their history and circumstances. That makes you a lot more forgiving of their behavior because they really do make the best decisions they can. The other thing I want my kids to totally get is stop worrying about what other people do. Stop competing with other people. The only thing you're concerned about is, are you a little bit better today? You know?
Yes.
And then the final thing I wish that I had done a lot more of, I wished I had talked to the people I love like somebody I love. Meeting my wife, my kids. The more I remember that, my wife and I are older now, and we used to fight for weeks. I mean, they'd go on for weeks. You know how hard it is to sleep with somebody and not talk to them?
I do know. I do. Very well.
Now we just have a rule. We heal the problem before we go to sleep. Fights aren't allowed to take long. Like one time she just cleans my clock. And then before I get a chance to say anything, what does she do? She goes, "We're done now." And then she starts being nice to me.
Oh my.
But it's the idea of, life is a lot of suffering, but make it short. Make the suffering short. Quit carrying it around with you. Get out of the rear view mirror and look at what's in front of you. My relationship with my wife has gotten nothing but better. And it's because of that. We really get that these days are numbered, and we don't allow ourselves to waste them. And I think if more people recognize that, they would have better lives.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Mayor Parris, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You have inspired me. You've inspired so many countless people. Thank you for your time, for sharing your insights. Is there anything else before we sign off that you want to share with the good people listening that you have going on?
But if you want to get really good at something, teach it. Teach it. I teach lawyers all over the country, and I do it because it makes me so much better at it.
Yeah.
I guess that's the final thing I'd leave with you.
The teacher learns more than the student, most often, always.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's right. Thank you. I'm honored you wanted to do this. I appreciate it.
It's a highlight of my entire summer. I appreciate the person you are. I mean that. And I hope that when I'm in Lancaster visiting my family, we could meet up in person. I could say hi and catch up.
Maybe let me know when you're there.
That would be awesome. Maybe play some pickleball, hone our skills there.
Maybe I'll have the pickleball courts up at the house by then.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Hey, I hope you have an amazing rest of your summer, both you and your family.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, bye now.